morning. It is Tuesday, June 9th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, the G7 summit wraps up in Germany with U.S. President Obama and French President Hollande agreeing to push for more Russian sanctions, as well as for an Iranian nuclear deal by the end of the month. Egypt's general-turned-president Abdel Fattah al-Sisi concludes a tumultuous year in power. And later on the show, a new study by the RAND Institute highlights the economic benefits of an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal, if people would listen. Good morning, I'm Yael Levy, and we begin today in Germany, where United States President Barack Obama and his French counterpart François Hollande have reached an agreement on several major issues as the G7 summit wrapped up yesterday. The two leaders agreed on the need to push for more sanctions against Moscow over the prolonged conflict in eastern Ukraine, as well as Iran's talks with Western powers over its nuclear program. Hollande and Obama met on the sidelines of the summit of the 7 industrialized Western countries, where topics like Russia, who again was not invited by the way, Ukraine and ISIS heavily dominated the agenda. In closing remarks given by the American President, Obama was candid enough to admit that the United States is yet to develop a complete strategy, to quote him, on how to defeat ISIS and stem the group's rise in Syria and Iraq. It was a statement that actually came after the president met with Iraqi leader al-Abadi, the first meeting between the two leaders since ISIS took over Ramadi and control of the Anbar province in Iraq last month. Joining me in studio to discuss this is I-24 News Middle East analyst Ali Waqid. Ali, good morning to you. Let's listen to what President Obama had to say in the concluding remarks of the G7 summit yesterday and take it from there.
So we want to get more Iraqi security forces trained, fresh, well-equipped, and focused. President Abadi wants the same thing. So we're reviewing a range of plans for how we might do that, essentially accelerating the number of Iraqi forces that are properly trained and equipped and have a focused strategy and good leadership. There was discussion about additional steps that we might need to take if Russia, working through separatists, doubled down on aggression inside of Ukraine. Those discussions are taking place at a technical level, not yet at a political level, because I think the first goal here going into a European Council meeting that's coming up is just rolling over the existing sanctions. Ultimately, this is going to be an issue for Mr. Putin. He's got to make a decision. Does he continue to wreck his country's economy and continue Russia's isolation in pursuit of a wrong-headed desire to recreate the glories of the Soviet Empire?
Joined via Skype from Garmisch in the footsteps, so to speak, of the German Alps by Russia Today correspondent Harry Fear. Harry, good morning to you. You're there.
Good morning.
Good morning. You were there at what seemed to be, the witness to the madness outside the summit. But what would you say were the highlights of the G7 this year?
Well, I think for me, reporting on the ground, it's been seeing the unbelievable police presence, tens of thousands of police officers spread over tens of kilometers around the base of the Alpine mountain where that incredible resort up on the hill held the summit itself. And to see the police presence far outnumbering the thousands of protesters, almost a 5-to-1 ratio, 5 police officers readied in riot gear for every protester, largely peaceful over the last few days, and many of the demonstrations were massively put off by the rain. But certainly a very solid effort on the part of the protesters, overwhelmingly German, but some foreigners as well, traveling from around the world to come here and protest against the Group of 7 summit. And particularly as a result of the, we can say, increased polarization of the world stage as a result of the conclusions of the summit and those sound bites and messages coming from it. I think those protesters will be happy that they made the effort coming all of this way. Whether or not they were picked up and their messages were picked up by those up the valley, well, probably not. the president of the European Council, Donald Tusk, seemed to think that the protests were going on at the bottom of the valley totally peacefully, and that this was a sign of flourishing democracy in Germany. But the voice from the protesters is something of a much different message.
No, much of a matter. And Harry, I think you're describing most likely, the state of mind of many leaders in the world when they think one thing is happening and another one actually is. But to the summit itself and the sidelines meetings that were going on there, I'm assuming that one of the major issues was ISIS, was Iraq, and there was this awkward moment, we believe, or you can tell me about that, between al-Abadi and Obama. What was concluded when it came to ISIS, one of the main topics of the G7 summit? Or the battle against it?
Well, indeed, it was one of the top 5 subjects. Certainly, one of the key takeaways for me on that has been the fact that, of course, Russia has not been included, and Russia sees itself as a key world player with regard to combating Islamic terrorism. And there have been, even because, of course, my role was on the ground reporting with the protesters, I wasn't actually up the hill at the summit. But one of the key takeaways from the voices down here was that how can you possibly have a proper, full, inclusive global strategy to combat Islamic terrorism and extremism, and particularly ISIS, without including Russia, and in fact excluding it and attacking Russia geopolitically and diplomatically in such a strong way. Even German protesters, ordinary folk on the ground, picking up on the kind of common sense, lack of common sense in the strategy with that.
In the strategy with that. Harry, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And as you mentioned, the demonstrations were a huge part, as they are usually in the industrialized, or actually with the G7 or G8 at times, summits. But Ali Waqid with me in studio here, one of the main issues of this summit was ISIS. We heard President Obama admitting, basically, when he says there's no complete strategy, but it was very awkward to see him in al-Abadi. What does that mean for the continued, because one of the main issues, one of the continued issues is the battle against ISIS on the ground, and distancing of the U.S. when they say that, or what are we looking at?
First of all, Yael, this comes to complete the conference that took place last week in Paris regarding the fight against the Islamic State. But once again, the focus is on, for political reason and for trying to consolidate the alliance with the moderate Sunnite countries, the focus is on Iraq and not on Syria. And once again, we say that we cannot separate the Islamic State from Syria and Iraq, because this is the title, this is the name of the
organization itself.
Of the organization itself, and supplying arms and fighters from the two countries is the key tool of the Islamic State to maintain its rule in this region. But the most important thing in this meeting was the will of President Obama to clarify the real position of Prime Minister Abadi, and whether Prime Minister Abadi sees himself as the leader of all Iraqis or the leader of the Shiite majority, and whether Mr. Abadi was ready, in case he received the support needed by the West, it was ready to distance himself from Iraq. The American administration is so worried that Mr. Abadi is a new edition of al-Maliki, of Nouri al-Maliki, who was an Iraqi prime minister, but actually he was more the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Iraq, and it comes 2 weeks after Defense Secretary Ashton Carter said that the Americans are doubtful about the will of the Iraqis to fight the Islamic State, and that the fact that the Iraqi forces are so reliant on the Shiite militias put questions about the real will to go into this fight, until the West, the international community, sees there cannot be a separation between Syria and between Iraq.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, and just to conclude the G7, it feels as if that, when they're speaking about Iraq, when the world leaders are speaking about Iraq, they've given up a little bit on that. And one of the main things that is leading up to is Obama's meetings on the sidelines regarding the Iranian deal by the end of the month. Would you say that that is the case?
Yeah, I think that is the case, and more than that, Yael, the fact that the G7 wants and needs to sanction Russia dictates much of its policy within the summit and and in general, because as your guest from Russia today said, you cannot have an inclusive strategy to face the Islamic State without including Russia in this fight, and including Russia in this fight bring Russia to bring its position vis-a-vis the Iranian nuclear file, because Russia sees it as a package. The need to consolidate the moderates in Iran and to go for a compromise in Iran is part of this general fight against the Islamic State. And to fight the Islamic State, you need to understand that the regime in place in Syria is the one that should fight the Islamic State, and we know that there is no unanimity about Bashar Assad and the G7.
Or in short, they're going to keep meeting. Ali, thank you on that one as we move along. Now back to the region. A year after Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was sworn into office, many on the sidelines would claim he has taken the country back to the pre-Arab Spring days of the Mubarak regime. Stable, but poorly lacking in human and civil rights, and that's a mild understatement. Aware of the criticism hurled against him, Sisi on Sunday did the barely imaginable and apologized to the Egyptian people and took responsibility for any abuses they suffered under his rule. Since ousting his Muslim Brotherhood predecessor in office, Mohammed Morsi, Sisi has clamped down on Islamist militants who are accused of killing hundreds of soldiers and policemen. Several secular activists have also been jailed for violating a law, curbing demonstrations, and being of the foreign media makes it even, harder to cover Egypt from within. So, with the security situation in the Sinai Peninsula in peril, militants pledging alliance to the Islamic State roaming across the desert, carrying out attacks against government forces, there is no indication that Sisi's security clampdown will fade away anytime soon. And to discuss the situation in Egypt a year into Sisi's rule, I'm joined in studio still by Ali Waked, I-24 News Middle East analyst, by Zach Gold, a fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies. Good morning to you. Ami Kaufman next to me as well, because I don't leave home without you.
Oh, thank you.
There's that for anything and everything press. But before we break it down, let's take a look at Gabi Weiniger's report about the past year in Egypt and break it down.
Ex-army chief turned president, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has become the face of the new regime.
I am looking to a new era built on reconciliation and tolerance and reconciliation with the past, except with those who committed crimes or used violence as a tool.
Reconciliation with the past may be one promise al-Sisi has kept during his first year in power. After leading a military coup against Egypt's first freely elected civilian president on July 3, 2013, critics say the general-turned-politician has taken the country back to the era of Hosni Mubarak, a one-man show that is a far cry from the democracy millions called for during the Arab Spring uprising.
All the evidence points that actually Egypt is going backwards, and that Egypt today is a more repressive place than Egypt under Mubarak over the last few years.
Propelled to office after a controversial vote to seal his grip on power, al-Sisi's regime has already seen more than 15,000 Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers arrested, scores condemned to death, and secular activists put behind bars.
Whoever demonstrates is arrested because of the anti-protest law. Whoever expresses his opinion is monitored. So I am trying to be careful and wait to see if this continues or not.
Weighed down by rights critics, many Egyptians still say Egypt is a better, more stable country under his rule. Al-Sisi vowed from the start to bring about security and repair the economy, and action has been taken.
The announcement of $12.5 billion in investment aid to Egypt in the next period makes us very comfortable and ensures the trust that Egypt will develop and become better than before.
Progress to the economy has been backed by improved relations with the international community, much attributed to al-Sisi's stand against terror, not only in the Sinai Peninsula, but across the region. But the war on terror has given the military a free hand to crack down on dissent, and it underlines his message to the nation. Now is not the time for opposition. For the moment, al-Sisi will remain the face and the fist of the regime.
I want to start straight with you, Ali. When it comes to Egypt, we're looking at this report, actually a very comprehensive, great report. What happened? Because, in other words, this is the same situation as under Mubarak. Sisi is Mubarak, is Nasser, is Mubarak, is Sisi. I mean, what happened?
No, as you mentioned during the report, yes, Egypt is getting back to the eve of the revolution of 2011. There is no officially emergency laws now taking place in Egypt, but all the atmosphere is of an emergency situation where freedom and rights are
out the window.
Are out of the window. And you know, when you see tanks of the army close to the campuses of the universities, and when you see secret services in the campuses and in the grounds around the campuses, and when you see that the April 6th movement militants are being arrested, and when you see the self-censorship that the mass media are putting on themselves, you know, I'm not talking about the public media, we understand that maybe the January 2011 revolution did not take place, and all the situation is back to the era of President Mubarak. But yeah, I want to mention something that seemed very controversial. On one hand, we see that the lack of rights and the lack of freedom. On the other hand, we see that the Egyptian stock market are well reacting to the rule of President Sisi, getting between 20 to 30% higher than it was before his election. The market want to see and to feel stability, and Abdel Fattah Sisi is bringing this stability now. He's bringing stability.
Economic stability.
I'm not sure that economic stability and atmosphere of a stability, but on the other hand, the human rights in Egypt are not being respected.
Are not being respected. And Zach Gold, because you live and breathe and you research Egypt, and I'm wondering with you, how easy, I mean, it seems like it was very easy for Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to consolidate all this power.
Yeah.
That people actually, basically rolled out the red carpet for him. Was it that easy? And are we looking at more of that to come from Egypt, given the situation in the Sinai?
Yeah, I think, thank you for having me on, Yael, and for Ali's contribution to this as well. I would actually argue that he's not consolidating. There are a number of different parties, the army, in which he's the most represented part, and of course the Interior Ministry, the Judiciary. They're all working in unison, but not necessarily consolidated together. So that's something to keep in mind, that I don't think Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has the same type of control that Mubarak
had.
That being said, we've discussed on the show before, the country looks around the region and they see Libya to one side, they see Yemen and Syria, and they say, we're better off with this, we're better off under a harsh system if it at least has the prospect of moving forward. Now, of course, as the summer months move on, as Ramadan happens, depending on whether or not they can provide enough power and energy during the very warm, high air conditioning, high electricity periods, that's going to be very important.
No, that's going to be one of them. And speaking of that, we're also joined from Cairo by freelance journalist Hiba Hadi. Hiba, good morning to you.
Good morning.
A year on Sisi's rule, as we're just discussing here in studio, would you say that the people of Egypt, the civilians, there always seems to be much more inclination to like a military man if you're Egyptian, but would you say, Hiba, that the people of Egypt are happy with al-Sisi? Are there any dissent voices? Is it even allowed to say something against his administration if one wanted to?
Well, let me tell you that, first of all, even God, we all human, we are not considered as one God. So there is no person we can consider it perfect. I mean, the whole nation consider him that he's a perfect leader for any nation. So let me explain this more for the audience or our viewers.
Yes.
Sisi had the majority of the Egyptian heart, so they are with him. The difference between Morsi and Sisi, for example, Morsi, he promised us within 3 months he's going to change some things, and it didn't happen. He didn't keep his words. But Sisi, he was very clear. He stated that I will do my best. We have a problem, issues in our country, and we are going to work on it.
But no, which is the right policy. But one can argue, Hiba, and it's a great point, that that Morsi was in power barely for 1 year, and what happened afterwards is that the entire Muslim Brotherhood is almost diminished. When it comes to the Muslim Brotherhood, is it even possible to be a Muslim Brotherhood supporter these days in Egypt?
Well, I didn't get the whole question. If you can repeat it, please.
I'm saying, is it possible still to be a Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, a Muslim Brotherhood supporter in Egypt these days?
There is a supporter, but they are not crystal clear. They are joining the organization for the Muslim Brothers. For example, I will give an example. Someone is supporting them, but he's not one of them. He's saying we should have give them a chance. We didn't, and we should allow them to have the whole chance, and we have to help them, and we didn't do that. So he's not a crystal clear brotherhood member. But in the same time, he considered that maybe we did a mistake.
Yes.
So it's normal in Egypt. You have to say, I'm a Brotherhood supporter or I'm Sisi supporter.
In that, Hiba, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for joining us from Cairo this morning, because it's always important to hear from the people themselves. But Zach, I felt like slightly uncomfortable for Hiba to discuss the Muslim. I mean, one has to state it.
You know, one of the interesting things in your report, you showed one of the researchers from Human Rights Watch, and of course, Human Rights Watch put out a report talking about the rights abuses during the past year of Sisi. That's one thing that's to be expected. It's Human Rights Watch. It's what they do.
Right.
What's somewhat less expected is that the State Department issued a letter to Congress in which, by U.S. law, they had to either say that Egypt was on a democratic path or provide a national security waiver saying it's in the U.S. national security interest that it doesn't matter if Egypt's on a democratic path. And in this report, they basically said, they said it's in our interest that Egypt receive our military aid because of its cooperation in the fight against terrorism, especially in the Sinai and on the Libyan border. Yet it goes on to list pages and pages of abuses and of the backward moving of rights in the country, not just towards Egyptians, of course, towards Egyptians, but also towards international NGOs, to the number of there are now 3 U.S. citizens in Egyptian prison that are considered political cases.
No, but it's interesting, and I think we're concluding that it seems to me that the United States is willing to accept human rights violations if the countries can maintain a semi-form of quietness, so to speak, in the region and help their agenda. I'm the one who said that. But, that when it comes to Egypt, I'm locking everybody in studio with us as we move on to Ami Kaufman. And, the news you missed while scanning the headlines, now that we've concluded the death of the Arab Spring in Egypt. Yes.
Okay, we're going to start with Iran and the short little media comparison like we do sometimes in the mornings. Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian had another hearing yesterday for his trial. He was being accused of espionage, spying for the United States. This is the second session of his trial. IRNA, as you can see, this is IRNA. Well, this is right now we're showing the Washington Post, but the first one was IRNA. Very brief report. The reason for this is that Iranian media is not allowed to say anything from closed-door hearings, and the Iranians prosecute people, media outlets that are reporting from there. This is showing back there.
And I'm going to, just because we have Ali Waqid locked in studio with us, I'm wondering if Razia, and I'm just theorizing here, is going to become some form of a pawn in the June 30th agreement, because to me it's all, and call me suspicious and conspiratorial.
Absolutely. When we talk with Iranian colleagues, and they don't have much more information about what is going on inside doors, but they say that the situation must be more clear as June 13th get closer, and as we know what are the deal that might be concluded between Iran and between the international community.
And the international community, and this is all just very, it's very interesting that it's all happening at this month.
Right, definitely. Yes. Let's take a look at the Washington Post. The wording of the headline, of course, is interesting. Espionage, the word espionage is in quotes. And they try to get, I always think about, the Washington Post people, it must be very difficult for them to write about their colleague that is currently being held. It must be a very touchy issue. They try to gather as much information as they can, and they really can't get anything. The only thing they have is from his attorney, Leila Akhshan, who says that he is in good spirits.
And I think you want to be careful also. And speaking of which, it's interesting that we just discussed Egypt, because it's semi-reminiscent of the Al Jazeera cases of the journalists that were locked there in, for a year. How long were they there?
They were there for over a year.
For over a year. And, you
and of
can't...
course, their trial is still ongoing.
Exactly. Yes. And, the institutions themselves don't really know, how to deal with that. Sorry, their employers. Yes.
A very similar topic, by the way. This is from Al Jazeera. Saudi Arabia upheld a sentence for a blogger. Personally, as a blogger myself, I found this it's really scary. 10-year prison sentence and 1,000 lashes for blogger Raif Badawi. He was arrested in 2012 and sentenced to 7 years in jail and 600 lashes for setting up a website called Free Saudi Liberals. But since then, it was overturned, and then there was another court hearing which harshened the first punishment, and now he was also added $266,000 fine.
Well, I mean, I know you're a blogger, but
by the way, mentioning Saudi Arabia, there are many local protest initiatives that are not being covered in the Western media. There are no single day in Saudi Arabia that human rights activists are being arrested, and the Saudi secret police arrest journalists or militants or civil militants for being considered as a risk to the public order. But yes, in Saudi Arabia, in spite of all this stability, under the table, many initiatives are taking place in order to try to bring this Arab Spring and at least some of its spirit
back
to the Saudi society.
And there's no question that Saudi Arabia is against that in every way, and you see in this sort of ruling and in their regional policy providing so much aid to Egypt to turn back the clocks. And of course, it's not just liberal human rights activists. There are also many Islamists in Saudi Arabia who want to change the system as well.
The system back. But again, the transformation of the region, if we can revert that back a little bit.
And by the way, he's been lashed already 50 times in public, and and it looks like he's going to start getting lashings. They give him lashings every Friday after prayers publicly. And this is just...
No.
I'm glad Ali and Zach are here with me, because this is this item is a bit unclear to me, but it's very interesting.
But okay.
In Cairo right now, for 2 days, Syrian opposition members are meeting, and they are forming a new alliance. I mean, the old alliance was called the National Coalition. They have decided to call the new alliance the Syrian National Opposition, but they promise that it'll be totally different from the first coalition. And maybe Ali has something to say about this.
It's important that it is taking place in Egypt, because the Saudis were not satisfied from the Egyptian position vis-a-vis the Syrian regime and vis-a-vis the Syrian crisis, and the Saudis made a huge pressure over the Egyptians to try to adopt the Saudi position vis-a-vis the Syrian crisis. I don't want to say that they condition their financial support to Egypt with the change in the Egyptian position, but they sent more than a message. They want to see a different Egyptian position vis-a-vis the civil war in Syria.
We have a very little time left, but Zach, have the Egyptians then sort of kowtowed to the Saudis' initiative when it comes to Syria?
I don't say they've kowtowed, but this comes to an issue of getting the entire Arab Muslim world together on any issue, right? Egypt, Saudi, Qatar, and Turkey all have different positions on what to do about Syria.
Okay. And sadly, all the time that we have left on this issue, but when we get back, more messes in the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and an interesting initiative to try and resolve it that not many people are listening to. We'll tell you about it for the first time. First, though, now, the morning headlines. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition on this June
9th.
Thank you for that. For that, I usually have Ami Kaufman here in studio, but today a completely different, a different issue, and we're not going to the press. If Israeli and Palestinian leaders required a compelling reason to sit down at the negotiating table, a new report by the Washington-based RAND Institute just gave them 170 million reasons, actually $170 million reasons of them. According to the study released yesterday, a negotiated two-state solution would infuse the Israeli and Palestinian economies with $120 billion and $50 billion, respectively, over 10 years. On the flip side, a return to violence would have stark negative impact on both sides, with per capita GDP falling by 46% in the West Bank and Gaza and by 10% in Israel by 2024. Now, you would think that the sensible thing to do after listening to those numbers is measure economic loss versus gain, but one need not expect sense in the Middle East. And as world leaders, regional foes, and many of envoys have tried and failed to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict over the course of the last several decades via the two-state solution, some other voices are beginning to be heard with possible new solutions that may make, once again, sense. Well, one can expect in the Middle East. But to discuss this report, I am joined in studio by I-24 News senior news editor Ruthie Sinai, who personally I love having in the studio.
Good morning.
There you go. By I-24 News, Ami Kaufman, my guru, and yeah, of course,
walking calendar.
And oh, yeah, exactly. And also, good morning to journalist and founder of One Homeland, Two States, and that's the thing we're going to tell you about. Meron Rappaport, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, before we break this down, let's take a look at the following report about the RAND study and discuss.
If moral, diplomatic, and cultural incentives were not enough to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a new study suggests another very good reason to end the long-standing feud. Billions and billions of dollars. According to a RAND Corporation study, a peace agreement would be worth no less than $123 billion to the Israeli economy over the first 10 years, whereas Palestinians would be in store for a $50 billion windfall. In terms of monthly per capita income, the Palestinians would see an expected 36% rise, whereas 5% growth is predicted for Israelis. The study looked into 5 different scenarios: a two-state solution, a coordinated unilateral withdrawal, an uncoordinated unilateral withdrawal, non-violent resistance, and a violent uprising. The results were unequivocal. The economic benefits to both sides vary greatly based on their levels of cooperation. For example, in the case of another violent uprising, per capita gross domestic product would fall by 46% in the West Bank and Gaza, and by 10% in Israel by 2024. The Israeli economy alone would face a loss of about $250 billion in economic opportunities. The effect of an Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank also depends on the level of coordination. If coordinated with both the Palestinians and the international community, the effect on the Israeli economy would be almost irrelevant, while the Palestinians would gain about $8 billion over a decade. If uncoordinated, an Israeli withdrawal from the territories could cost Israel $20 billion due to the need to unilaterally reincorporate settlers. In the case of non-violent resistance, mainly comprising existing international economic pressure and call to boycott Israel, an $80 billion loss for Israelis is expected, with the Palestinians suffering as well, to the tune of $12 billion. The bottom line is very simple. The absence of peace is costly.
Joined on the phone from Jerusalem by the report's author, Roth, and Mr. Ross, Anthony. Mr. Ross, good morning to you, the director of RAND, Israeli-Palestinian Initiative. The report is, needless to say, makes sense. Who reads the RAND report? Are top-level, I'm asking you outright, are top-level officials in the Israeli and Palestinian administration, are they reading this? Has anybody reacted? And do they take heed? Notice.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for having us on. We appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your audience today. Yes, in fact, they've been very receptive. We briefed people both in the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority before the release of the paper, and people were extremely receptive. We, of course, don't know what conversations they will have or the reaction over time, but we were quite gratified at our reception and the kinds of questions that were asked, because they were very good and they were very informative, and we felt the dialogue was very useful. Such as what? The kind of questions. Now you've got me interested. Well, they were interested in the numbers, and I was just listening to some of the I think the audio that you were talking about, but the numbers are quite striking, and what RAND sets out to do is try to put forward objective analysis based upon the numbers. And we built these numbers up with quite a bit of care to be sure that they were objective, and we don't take a position on either side or any of the scenarios that are alternative futures. But they were quite interested in the impact of these scenarios on their futures, and that would help inform their choices. And I guess the other thing that was really of great interest is what we call the cost calculator, which is on the website, which would enable officials, both in really or academics or anybody who wanted to change the assumptions, and that would enable them to pursue and investigate any scenario they might actually want to look into. So that's a powerful policy tool that we were pleased people thought would be quite useful to them.
No, and the numbers speak for themselves. Mr. Ross, I want to thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's an important report, but as the numbers speak for themselves to all my esteemed people around my esteemed colleagues here around the table, at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say that, if we were to expect sense in the Middle East and people were to take a look at how much money would be lost in the event of violent confrontation and whatnot, then, we wouldn't be sitting here discussing it. But, Ami Kaufman, before we start this, two-state solution seems to be floating around for many, many years. I think we can agree that it hasn't been faring so well. There have been some voices over the course of the last several years, or maybe over the course of the last year or 2 years, calling for some sort of a different solution because unilateral withdrawals have not worked.
Right.
Two-state solution, nobody's sitting down. What are those voices? What are they calling for? And that's going to lead us to Marwan.
Yeah, we're hearing a few different terms that are starting in the last year. We're hearing a lot more about BDS. We're hearing a lot more about apartheid. And, of course, like you said, the one-state solution. And when we talk about the one-state solution, we're talking not necessarily only one state. We're talking about things that are not two-state solution.
Right.
For example, because I think Marin will probably say that, you might not want to call your solution a one-state solution. There are a lot of different variations. There's confederacies. There's one space. There are a lot of things. One space, two homes. We'll get into that. But speaking about how people are talking about here in Israel, just recently on Channel 2, Israel's largest, most important station, on Friday, and probably the show with the most highest ratings, the Friday evening show, there was a lengthy item about how a binational state would look. They interviewed settlers, politicians. There are right-wing politicians that are also on the left, but right-wing politicians who are very vocal about it. They support the one-state solution. Most importantly, Ruby Rivlin, the president of Israel, has voiced support for a one-state solution. There are others like Moshe Aarons, the former defense minister, journalists like Emily Amorusi, Khalil Porat. These are people who have voiced support. It's a bit unclear what kind of their one state looks like. We're talking about, first of all, it does not include Gaza. It does not include a return of refugees.
Right.
Their demography statistics are a bit different than what is usually seen. And it seems like most of the discussion, by the way, until it came to Israel, has been happening outside, as we can see from the next item that I have. One item that made a big splash was an interview in The New Yorker with its editor, David Remnick, a whole piece about Ruby Rivlin and his one-state vision. So it's starting to talk. Israelis are starting to talk about it more. But what about Palestinians? Khalil Shkaki, who is considered the most, reliable pollster in the West Bank and Palestinian territories, in April put out some data about support. Now, it's still not a majority amongst Palestinians. 51% support the two-state solution, but 60% say that the two-state solution is no longer practical due to Israeli settlement expansion. And 71% believe that the chances for establishing a Palestinian state next to the state of Israel in the next 5 years are slim or non-existent. And I just want to end with one poll, which is happening. It took place by the Brookings Institute in D.C. Things are changing in America as well. 71% said that if a two-state solution fails, they favor a binational democratic state over a Jewish state, which deprives Palestinians of citizenship.
Okay, numbers are changing in terms of people understanding that maybe the two-state solution is not happening. Maron Rappaport, why are you here? What is your initiative?
Our initiative, we call it two states, one homeland, two states. We are not talking about one state. I think the failure of the two-state solution is very evident, since the failure of the Kerry initiative a year ago, there's no initiative at all. But even before, it was evident, I think, to most Israelis and Palestinians. There is still, strangely enough, there is still high support for the two-state solution, about 60 to 70% on both sides. At the same time, 60 to 70% do not believe that you'll see the two-state solution in their lifetime, and it doesn't matter if they're 18 or 80 years old. So we are the crisis is very evident now. The one-state solution to which Ami referred, I think, is non-existent. Is not really politically existent because it's either an annexation by Israel, what people like Uri Elitzur and other people and Tzipi Chotoveli and others are talking about, or the Palestinian idea of just a democratic state that will make Israel disappear, and I don't see Israel, one of the strongest country with the strongest army in the world, disappear from its own will. So there has to be a search for a new solution, and our solution, we are talking about two states.
It's you and a Palestinian
we are an Israeli group together with a Palestinian group. We are not a negotiation group. We don't negotiate. We talk about principles, about common principles. There's a Palestinian group, Israeli group, and we are talking about, the idea is quite simple. We are talking about two states on the 67 borders, but with open borders and freedom of movement, so that anyone can travel, move, and eventually reside wherever he wants.
So the settlers will stay where they are?
Israelis will, we are not talking about settlers. We are saying Israelis will be allowed to live in Palestine as Israeli citizens and Palestinian residents, as the European model of the EU. There is this model.
And Palestinians who currently live, say, in Ramallah will be able to live here in Tel Aviv?
Yes, including refugees who will be naturalized in Palestine. Palestinian refugees will be naturalized in Palestine, and then afterwards they will be able to move in the country from which they were forced.
They will vote for a Palestinian president. They will pay taxes in Ramallah,
exactly.
But they can live in Tel Aviv.
They will vote. Taxation, these are very complicated things, but they will vote for the Palestinian parliament. They will not change the demographic mixture of Israel as a majority Jewish.
I gotta say, because I'm and Ruthie, I think you'll agree with me. We're all journalists here, Ruthie, and you have covered Israel and the Palestinian territories for many, many years. It sounds like utopia. It sounds like, a wonderful dream, but given the animosities and what's been going on here over the course of the last several decades, do we really think that's viable? Actually, Ruthie, would you believe something like this? And the two sides would be able to sit and discuss something like this?
I wouldn't, but that's why I'm a journalist, and that's why Meron is...
I would say that the two-state solution is a complete utopia now. To believe that separation is possible is complete utopia. This is the reality. We are mixed. The two peoples are mixed already. Are already mixed. So we don't invent anything new.
And we also have, joining us also on the phone, I think from Ramallah today, we have Ashraf Al-Arami from, formerly of the Palestinian Authority. You've heard of this, Mr. Al-Arami, you've heard of this initiative. Do you see the Palestinian people accepting that, in many ways, foregoing the dream of of a Palestinian state in that respect? Do you think that's going to fly? Now, Meron, you can jump in. Mr. Al-Arami.
I think that the Palestinian people is very open to any solution based on 1967 borders. If it is one homeland and two states, as your guest said, it is I think, acceptable in the Palestinian within the Palestinian people. But the question here is, it is viable, the Israelis can accept such solution or not. We are stuck to the two-state solution based on 1967 borders because there is a majority in Israel, there is a majority in Palestine, and the international community, the whole international community adopted this solution. So it is more realistic, more than any other solution.
With us also is Mr. Orlid Ravivi of the Efrat settlement, because this would go directly, an initiative as such, directly also to you and, you know, to the settlements of Israel in the territories. Would that be something that people living there would accept, to live in Palestine in many ways, but and be Israeli citizens?
I think, Lucy, because it's important if the two...
that was actually Mr. Ravivi, Mr. Al-Ajrami. That was a question to Mr. Ravivi. Okay, sadly, we are out of time. And I don't think Mr. Ravivi could hear me, but I really want to thank you all for being here. Mr. Meron, we're going to have you back as well. I think that, you know, this is something to be discussed. When we get back, Israeli Book Fair, do stay with us. First, the news. Welcome back. It is still Tuesday, June 9th, 2015. I know that because Ami Kaufman told me that.
That's right. You should believe everything.
Everything you say. It's kind of hard when you wear a purple bow tie, but...
that hurts.
Maybe, yeah, okay. This is still the morning edition. I am still Yael Avi. This is still I-24 News. It's the place to be because we're based in Jaffa, which is in Israel, which is where a book fair, Book Week, Hebrew Book Week is taking place. People still read books. Could you believe that? Hebrew Book Week in 2015 kicked off last week, actually, giving Israeli bookworms around the country a chance to enjoy discounts and meet authors. Writer and lawyer Ronaldo, please help me pronounce your last name.
Vrobil.
Vrobil, and you can, don't worry, I can hear you. Ronaldo Vrobil is here with us as he came all the way from Brazil to Israel to promote his new book, Translating Hannah, which examines the folklore of Jews in the tropics and recovers an important part of the history of the community in the New World. And it's wonderful to have you with us. Let's first take a look at Mandy Kogosowski's report about the Hebrew Book Week and then discuss.
Forget the Kindle, tablet, and iPad. This week, Israel celebrates its annual Hebrew Book Week, and it's all about the good old-fashioned hard copy page turner. Across the country, outdoor fairs are held where books are sold at discount prices, and authors meet their readers for signings and a chat. The winner of the prestigious Sapir Award for Literature is also announced during this week. A true holiday for the written word lover, who can browse seemingly endless new and classic Hebrew titles spanning all genres. But reality outside this week is far more complicated. Reports show that the number of books bought during the first half of 2015 plummeted by almost 20% from the same period in 2013, and that new book sales fell by 35% this year alone. Many blame the situation on the law to protect literature and authors in Israel, commonly known as the Book Law. This law, which came into effect in early 2014, requires retailers to sell new books at a fixed price during its first 18 months, while settling a minimum royalties rate for the authors. While the original intent was to promote writing and literary distribution far from the publishers' discount wars, the law backfired and resulted in reduced book sales. Current Minister of Culture Miri Regev announced that she will form a committee to re-examine the law.
Well, Ronaldo Vrobil, before we discuss your book, okay, we just saw a report about how difficult it is to be a writer these days. The days of cell phones and screens. How did you wake up one morning and say, I want to be a writer and make no money whatsoever?
I am a lawyer too.
Aha!
That's the point.
Okay, you have a day job.
Yes.
Which is a good thing. Okay, that's a good thing. Now, by day a lawyer, and then you decide to write this book that I read a lot about. I haven't read the book yet. That deals with one of the most undiscussed topics, I think, of, I'm assuming you're Jewish.
Yes.
Yes, otherwise, why would you write about this? This is about the women who were basically Jewish women in the 30s, who were actually conned and sold into prostitution.
Yes.
In South America.
And elsewhere, they were sold as prostitutes all over the world. They were kidnapped by men in Russia and all those villages, all those Städte in Eastern Europe, and they promised to be their husbands and so on, and they brought them to America and other continents. And they,
human trafficking. Human trafficking. You were describing something. We do a lot of stories about how women from former Soviet Union who are not being trafficked around the world for the purpose of prostitution. Apparently, this was done many years ago as well. How do you decide, though, to write a book? I mean, I read the premise of it. It's about, you know, a man who falls in love with a woman. He needs to translate her letters, and she's actually one of these prostitutes, a Jewish prostitute in Brazil. It's in the 30s. How did you decide to write about, how did you find the story?
Well, first of all, my grandparents came from Russia and Poland and Latvia to Brazil on the 20s.
High five me, all of ours. Yeah, there you go, yeah. So basically, yeah.
We are cousins.
Yeah, because everybody, yeah. We all came from Latvia eventually,
yes.
yeah.
And so I was raised by them in a very Jewish environment. And they told me that on the 30s, when they came to Brazil, their letters were already censored. The envelopes were opened already.
Right.
And they felt that...
somebody was reading them.
Yes, yeah. That's it. And that environment was very important in my childhood. I spent a lot of time trying to imagine how was it coming from Russia and all those places into such a different country as Brazil. Okay, when I was 25 years old, about 20 years ago, someone told me that there were prostitutes, Jewish prostitutes, and I had never heard about it. And I asked myself, how come? You know, such an important issue about the Jewish history in Brazil, and I had never known about it. There was a writer in Brazil who opened this taboo.
Yeah.
He broke this taboo.
Prostitution being a taboo constantly, but this is, you know, this is something that really, you know, when I read about your book and I read about the story about the Jewish prostitutes sent over from, you know, from Europe to South America, I didn't know anything about it.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And you know what? It's such a taboo that I had to get 25 years old to hear about it, you know, and I was very shocked. I could never imagine that Jewish people could do such a thing. And then...
And we're not, I'm stopping you to say it's not the prostitution, but actually it was a mob of Jewish criminals that used to traffic the women, right? It was Jewish criminals that would traffic the women from Europe to South America.
Yeah, a Jewish mafia.
A Jewish mafia.
And they were millionaire.
You were shocked by a Jewish mafia?
But,
yes.
Yeah, but anyway, it was shocking knowing that they dealt with this.
Yeah.
And they had headquarters in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. They were very rich. They had properties all over the world. And and I realized that this was, how to say, eloquent silence in the Jewish community in Brazil.
That you wanted to tell the story about. And the book is called Translating Hannah. It's here translated into Hebrew in this case. Has it been translated into other languages already?
Yes, it has been translated into Spanish, Italian, German, French, Dutch. It will be translated into Polish, and now here in Israel.
And now here in Israel. I mean, I find it always commendable, I have to tell you, that people still write books. That people, no, the books that come out and are being published and are being sold. And is this your first time in Israel?
No, I've been here before.
Okay,
I'm Jewish.
You're Jewish, exactly.
I have
Those
my
are the people who come.
Okay,
but Ronaldo, I want to thank you for this. This is fabulous. I hope it sells many. And you're staying in studio with us as we move along to the next segment of the show. Yes. Take that, Hello Kaufman. Yes.
Okay, how can we have a show without the Kardashians?
We cannot have a life without, there cannot be a world without the Kardashians.
Well, remember when I told you a few days ago that Kim is pregnant with their second child?
I know, I have been celebrating ever since.
I know, you're partying hard. There's been speculation about the name because the first child was named Northwest, and people said is it going to be called Southeast? So TMZ has a scoop, and I love the TMZ reporting. TMZ reporting says they are not heading south. They are not heading south with the new baby name.
To all you journalism students, that's a headline.
I have to quote you from some of the great journalism here. Sources close to the couple Okay, these are anonymous sources close to the couple say there's no chance their bundle will be inspired by direction like their first one. Everyone's been speculating they'll go, South India. Okay, they say, and the reason is according to these sources is that they want the name to be strong. With North, there was a power element because it's always on top or pointing up. The other three just don't have that swagger.
No, they do not have that.
East and
swagger?
West don't have
yeah, swagger.
Yeah, right. It doesn't
swagger.
Have right.
Okay, swagger. Ami, does Ami have swagger? I think Ami is a strong, swaggering
Ami
name.
North Kaufman.
Ami North Kaufman, yes, and Yael East Levy. Yeah.
More celebrities. I have a lot of celebrities.
Please.
Okay, so these are a few of celebrities just being naughty and acting just totally. Okay, so Tom Hanks.
Ami, I have to stop you. I gotta love you. These are some celebrities. He says this with the bow tie. Some celebrities being naughty. Yes, shoot.
Tom Hanks' son, Chet, is wanted in Britain for trashing a British hotel room just outside the Gatwick Airport.
Chet!
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm all for Chet. Okay.
And Chet's been actually in the news lately. He's been.
Can you blame him with a name like Chet?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
he's been quoted on social media as using the N-word, the derogatory term for black people, and he says that he has the right to use that N-word, but that's a different story. Here,
because he's white. Yeah, okay.
I don't even want to go there.
Okay.
But here he says that all of these allegations are false about the hotel, that nothing happened and everything's fine. But this is what Gawker is saying, and I believe Gawker.
I always, because you know what? Gawker has great sources.
They do. Anonymous.
Anonymous sources.
On to another celebrity who has been acting a bit, I guess she was drunk. Kate Moss.
He says, giving her an excuse.
Kate Moss was, as the Mirror here shows us, branded a pilot that she was an EasyJet pilot, what you used to call a basic bitch, as she was escorted off the plane for drinking too much and being a bit too loud.
You know what I want to say? Because I remember Kate Moss when, back in the day, she was trashing hotel rooms with Johnny Depp, by the way.
Not with Chet Hanks, though.
No. She was back in the day. I have some popular culture knowledge. She was trashing hotel rooms in the early 90s with Johnny Depp, who she dated at the time.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, I'm a very serious journalist here.
Yeah.
I love that early, because I'm calculating now, she's kind of approximately my age. She's still got it in her.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, no,
totally.
Come on.
By the way...
So she gets trashed on airplanes.
Do you have any idea what basic bitch is? I had to look it up.
What is the
I had to look it up. I didn't know what it is.
It's
an American slang term used to describe an unoriginal woman, typically a fan of mainstream music or products. Basically, like, you're boring me.
No, but the fact that it actually has... Okay, yeah. Sorry, Ronaldo, we do very interesting and very important and hardcore news here. Yes.
Now, going back to the Kardashian clan, if I may.
Of course.
Because, Caitlyn Jenner, of course, I haven't talked about her in like a few hours. So let's just talk about her again.
You nor the internet.
She put another pic up on Instagram.
Yes.
And the pic is going kind of viral. It's her standing with her friends with backs turned towards us, and the caption is, "Learn from those who have walked the path before you." And she says, and the hashtag is trans is beautiful. I can only assume that all of these people have walked in the path before. These are all transgender women.
Transgender women, should be, yeah.
And she seems to be having a really good time. And this pic went, like 300 or 400,000 likes already.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I'm speechless. There's so many things you cannot say on this story, and I would like to.
Oh, you can tell me afterwards if you want to.
I will, yeah, but the fact that, okay. still more.
Okay, we're going to stick with Caitlyn.
Yeah.
But in Syria.
Yes.
In Syria, some rebels gave a shout out to Caitlyn. They say, "We want to be free like Caitlyn Jenner." Now we have the pic here. Let's see the pic here. And they posted it on Twitter. These rebels, these Syrian rebels. Okay, the pic isn't coming out, but meanwhile, I'll say what the pic says.
There we go.
Okay, here the sign that they hold up is
cow.
Caitlyn, we would write the Kafran Bel, which is the name of their town. Kafran Bel would spell with a K. Says we would write Kafran Bel with a C if it meant like you, we would be free. Maybe liberated Kafran Bel with a C, as you can see. They wrote it with a C afterwards. So isn't it? Isn't it a small world?
It's a small world. I cannot close my mouth. I love this. I'm wondering if all these people are still alive. I
always wonder, how rebels and people that are being attacked by us, how they have internet access and they have time to tweet.
No, thank you. And I think it is such a messed up world. If in Syria, where about 250,000 people have died,
yes,
still Caitlyn Jenner
is
news.
Is there? You see? I think it's amazing.
It's amazing. No, it's a small world after all. Yes.
I'm glad you were singing because our next item is from the Wall Street Journal. It's about singing, and you can join in if you know any of the tunes.
Yes, I shall.
But if you were at the airport at LaGuardia a few days ago, some people were stuck for 6 hours because of a delay. But luckily, some of the people who were stuck were people who were of the Disney productions of The Lion King and Aladdin.
Amen.
And they had a little feud there while they were waiting who could sing better, and I have brought you a clip.
Thank you. Let's have a look.
So who do you think won? I don't know.
Okay, I have to say one thing. If I were one of the passengers stuck waiting to get on that plane, I'd be canceling my ticket. I don't want to be on a plane. Yeah, thank you.
Let that show go on
Let
forever.
that show go on without me. No, yeah, my God.
Personally, I think The Lion King took that one.
I think The Lion King took that one. I think The Lion King takes the one.
We'll have to wait for the next
Can you imagine though, sitting next to one of these people on a flight? You could. You'd be like, yeah. I would be Kate Mossing and going, listen, you basic, okay?
You basic bitch.
Just be quiet, okay? And.
Are you a Simpsons fan?
I'm a huge Simpsons fan.
Well, and you obviously are aware of Sideshow Bob.
I love Kelsey Grammer.
Right.
Thank you.
Sideshow Bob, who has been trying to kill Bart Simpson for
years.
For years. Okay. It's going to happen.
Thank you.
It is finally going to happen. As the executive producer Al Jean revealed, he said that he was inspired to air dramatic scenes of Sideshow Bob
I love it. It's
killing
like when Game of Thrones meets The Simpsons.
Killing Bart Simpson because fans are already frustrated. And he brought an example of the coyote never killed the Roadrunner in the animated.
We have 30 seconds left, but people, you heard it first from Ami Kaufman. Sideshow Bob is going to kill Bart Simpson. Bart, what am I saying? Bart Simpson is going to die. We'll be back after the news. I-24 News Morning Edition on this June 9th. By the way, June 9th, I don't know if anybody remembers, is the day that ISIS came into fruition approximately a year ago. I know that because I read that in research. That has nothing to do with what we're about to discuss. No, but I am joined in studio by the beautiful Natalie Ehrlich. Natalie, good morning to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
By the even prettier Amit Kling.
The hirsute. The hirsute. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, I'm trying to get away from the Unabomber.
Thank you.
You're here for anything and everything technical. We're going to move to beauty and brains first. Natalie Ehrlich, host of the Economy magazine on I-24 News, which you should watch daily on what time was it?
Indeed, 7:40 p.m.
7:40 p.m. every day. But you had the chance to go to the Herzliya conference, a very important conference in Israel that is taking place these days. What is it, and what did you see?
All right. Well, yes, we did have the opportunity to go to the Herzliya conference, where actually we taped our show, which airs tonight at 7:40 p.m. So make sure to watch that.
Definitely. So it's the special at the Herzliya conference, which usually attracts wheelers and dealers from around the world.
Absolutely.
Right? And what were the main topics this year?
Today, well, actually, yes, they got the chance to speak with a number of people there, and some of the major topics that they spoke about was everything from robotics innovation to strategic threats that are happening all over the world, especially ISIS, which you just mentioned.
There you go. Yeah. ISIS celebrating their one-year anniversary. So interesting. It's like strategic threats, meaning that in the conference you met people that represented ideas of how to combat those or whatnot.
Absolutely. Such as well, we actually didn't focus so much on these threats. We focused more on the global economy. So some of the big names that were there were the French president, or the former one, Nicolas Sarkozy, as well as economist Nouriel Roubini, who provides a lot of forecasts about the world, and he often is a bit pessimistic on that front. So there are a lot of very interesting
What is the forecast for the global economy in the coming year, actually?
Well, we got a chance to speak with a number of CEOs who for reasons of their own, certainly have reasons to sound optimistic about the global economy.
They're CEOs.
Exactly.
Yes.
They
get great bonuses.
They did sound quite optimistic, actually, which was surprising to me because the Chinese economy, which has really held up the economy in recent years with the financial crisis, despite it cooling down, they are very bullish on the emerging world, especially India.
Really?
Indeed.
Okay. Kling, we're moving.
All right. Fine. I'll do it.
You'll do whatever it say. But you got a chance to speak to some people, and also you brought us some clips of who and what are they saying.
Okay, well, let's watch the Airbus CEO and chairman. He had some interesting comments on innovation.
On innovation, Airbus.
The future of aviation is going to demand that we have less CO2 emitting airplanes and more fuel efficient airplanes. So we have to be mindful of the environment. We have to be mindful of the economics of the airplane. The airlines are always looking for lower seat mile costs. So yes, we can expect, and again, we must demand that the airplanes of the future are much more fuel efficient and have less emissions.
Natalie, I'm going to say it because I'm the sarcastic, morose one. But the CEO of Airbus, speaking about we have to be mindful of the environment. Can we believe him?
Well, like I said, he is a CEO, so they certainly do have interests here. But something that I did hear that was quite interesting, they have actually some interesting innovations in the worlds of innovation going into space there. So it is something to look into. But they're going to have electric
seriously? Electric
planes
what?
Soon.
Really?
So you don't just have electric bikes or cars, so we can see electric planes.
Would you board an electric plane, Kling?
Where? To where?
Where to, yeah. An electric plane is basically...
If it's hit by lightning, it actually flies faster.
There you go. No, my notion with an electric plane is because my cell phone constantly runs out. I'm really afraid that, I'm seeing a pilot with the plane.
You just need a really long cable.
I want to charge my plane here. Can I just put it down?
There's a long cable, and there's a battery on
apparently
wheels.
these run on battery. So, I mean, there are some interesting points that he had to make. And also, I will just add, just in light of the aviation disasters that we've seen also in recent years, it is something to look into the innovation of securitizing those planes for passengers.
Anybody else?
We do have others, but you will have to watch our show tonight at 7:40 to get that.
Okay, there's a tease. Natalie, brilliant. And the Herzliya conference taking place in Israel now. The Economy magazine being basically broadcast and a show coming out of there this evening. Do watch it. It's at 7:40 Middle Eastern time. Natalie, as everybody in this studio, you're locked in for the next, what will be most likely the most exciting 13 minutes of your life. So,
all right.
Yes. Wait. Introduction.
Yes.
Amit Kling, also known as the Unabomber, fabulous roaming correspondent, Time Out magazine contributor, I-24 News.
That's all true. That is all true.
For the Tube magazine.
Yes.
What is happening? Anything and everything tech.
All right. We'll move on to the big news a bit later. But before that, last week I also was at a conference, the Shaping the Future. That was an educational technology conference.
An educational technology conference.
Now, it's interesting because it's a scene that is way more hesitant accepting technology than the commercial scene, for obvious reasons.
Right.
Way more conservative. But things are starting to change, and we have a report with a surprising celebrity guest, but I'll let you see.
Okay, surprising celebrity guest coming up.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
I'm LeVar Burton. I'm here to film a Kickstarter video. Well, I'm told room 24.
To an international audience, actor and TV presenter LeVar Burton may best be known as Star Trek The Next Generation's Geordi LaForge. But in the United States, the two words he is most associated with are the name of his lifelong project, the PBS children's show Reading Rainbow.
Take a look, it's in a book, a Reading Rainbow.
The show, which Burton hosted for its entire 21-season run, went off the air in 2006. But a year ago, Burton, alongside other colleagues, started a crowdfunding project to bring back Reading Rainbow as a mobile app.
We're creating an unlimited library of books and video field trips for today's digitally connected kids.
The success was phenomenal. The campaign gathered over $5 million in just 3 days, triple its original goal. As a special guest of the Israeli Education Technology Conference Shaping the Future 3, Burton spoke at length about the challenges presented to literacy in the modern age.
we are going to have to consume most of our literary content in the digital realm going forward. People ask me all the time, so, LeVar, for kids, what do you think? Printed books or digital? My answer is yes. I just want kids to read by any means necessary.
We can successfully get children to come to this very engaging technology to read. We have kids coming to the Reading Rainbow app reading about 200,000 books a week. I want to say that again. We have children coming to the Reading Rainbow app reading roughly 200,000 books a week. That's a lot. So what that says to me is that it is possible to get children to come to this very attractive, very engaging technology, not only to play games, but to read. That's pretty significant to me.
Digital age literacy can be a complicated issue, where it once surrounded by more text than ever, and at the same time are witnessing the onset of internet language, which is criticized for being of low quality at best. But Burton is not worried.
In 1983, when we started Reading Rainbow Guide, television was thought of in certain circles, certainly academically, as the enemy, the wasteland.
Language is an evolving thing. Language has been evolving since man has started using language. To try and to believe that it was always going to be the way it is when you were on this planet is a very narrow point of view. It is not natural for language, such a living thing, to be static, in my opinion.
You feel me?
Getting creepier.
I am so sorry. Well, Natalie, aren't you sorry you weren't there? First of all, can I just go like this?
Okay, all right, let's do this.
It's Jordy.
It is Jordy.
Jordy.
It is Jordy.
But it's also, listen, I love the passion. First of all, and I'm saying the horrific line, as a mother, this makes me very, very optimistic because children should read, and the wasteland is the internet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that again now.
I'm going to say that again.
Say that again.
That's him. That's the guy.
I know, okay.
But seriously, regarding this, Burton, I think reading is it's pretty good with apps like this. You know, the digital readers, they are promoting reading and literacy.
Yeah.
But the whole conference, I came there with the understanding that there's a changing relationship to the object. I've seen a lot of projects that have to do with augmented reality, virtual reality, a lot of 3D models, some interesting experiments. But we don't really know what the changing of the relationship to the physical object will do to us as people and thinkers.
To the physical object, you mean the...
Like, what will we have a better understanding from a virtual model than a physical one? I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
And there's no study to tell.
I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. I just really...
We're just going to
see.
It would be cool, though.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Anyway.
My God. We'll be going like this and
all the time. And there's some insane...
This will be, okay.
Yeah.
So, moving along.
Yeah, so the Apple Developer Convention, that was last night. And Apple, they unveiled some expected things, and they're going to upgrade Apple Maps, which is at a disadvantage for Google Maps, significantly so. New iOS, but the big news is the Apple streaming service, Apple Music.
Yes.
Which we have a tiny bit from the preview.
Okay, let's have a listen.
Yeah.
Music has such power in our lives. The way we listen to and experience music is undergoing a profound change these days. To have access to nearly all the music in the world at our fingertips and in our pockets is remarkable. And yet, there needs to be a place where music can be treated less like digital bits and more like the art it is, with a sense of respect and discovery. And if that place could actually accommodate and support the artists who make the music, and not just the top-tier artists, but the kids in their bedrooms too, provide them all with a home and a way to engage with their audiences, that would be pretty great.
And once again, Natalie and I here are churning in, saying that sounds really deep.
Indeed.
It doesn't really deep. What the heck does it mean?
That's right. Okay.
What does it mean?
This is going to essentially go in competition with Spotify, the massive streaming service, the biggest of its kind in the world. We've seen the unveiling of some new ones, like Jay-Z's much criticized Tidal,
very criticized,
which is not. It's probably not going to survive for long, or just going to be very niche.
And when they say,
but Apple Music has, yeah, sorry.
Oh no, when they say, you know, the idea is to make it all sound better, to make it all, you know, what is it about?
What they mean is, you know, Apple have a huge advantage over Spotify, and that's iPhones and iPads and Apple TVs, and they're just going to integrate a competing service. And Spotify is criticized by a lot of artists for very low revenues, somewhat insultingly so. I mean, when
that's a mild understatement.
When people just pirate albums and put them on YouTube,
right?
That's as an artist you can go, okay, that's just a guy. He's not making any profit. But Spotify is making millions.
And the artist is not getting it.
Yeah, so, you know, Taylor Swift pulled out of Spotify. Tom York pulled out of Spotify. All the radio albums he controls personally are not on it. Those controlled by the labels still are.
Right.
And so, because Spotify has way better relationship with the labels than the artists.
As was the case in the history of musicians, I have to say, with corporations and the labels versus the artists. So Spotify has become that. And Apple, you think, is trying to break that, you know, that cycle by...
Well, I don't know how much revenue they can offer, because still the payment program is $10 a month. That's what they're promising. Yeah. But still, they're adding some stuff that is, I don't know, I find less exciting, like artist-curated radio. That's nice. That's not huge.
Right.
What's going to matter is the artists that are on it, the listening quality, and how natural it's going to be to play from the iPhone. That's what's going to make it or break it.
Essentially. And what else, darling?
Are you terrified of robots?
You
should. You should be.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
I have dreams at night about robots, but I want one to do everything for me.
Okay. Yes. DARPA Robotics Challenge. DARPA, the U.S. Department of Defense Research Program Unit.
Ah, of course.
They challenge worldwide developers to program robots that could drive an ATV, open a valve, open a door, walk around. Now we have some footage.
Okay, we need
we
to
have
see
some adorable footage of them just falling down and failing terribly.
Let's have a look.
It's pretty funny.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not that afraid of robots right now.
Yeah.
Great. What are they supposed to do? Fight the next wars? Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
But wait.
DARPA Robotics Challenge. That everybody is failing.
But wait. Watch part 2.
Wait. Not good.
No.
Yeah, that's creepy. Not good. Not good. That's Kill Bill in robotics, right?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Wow.
Samurai robot.
Yes, creepy. That's a very precise robot. Wow. Only the Japanese folks, yes.
Now, what I'm getting here is, you've seen those 2 clips, right?
Yeah.
The first is kind of funny. The second is terrifying.
Terrifying.
They are trying to make the things that can do the things from clip number 2 walk better. As evidenced by clip number 1. I want these guys to stumble. My currently only advantage is that I can outrun this.
Okay. I don't want the second one.
No.
Yeah.
Imagine the second one with legs.
That was all the time we had. Stay with I-24 News. Check us out tomorrow.